everyone, and welcome to Playwright, a podcast about creating and sharing new ways to play. My name is Ryan Hamann, and you can call me H.
I'm Ryan Quintal, and you can call me Q. And Hamann, boy, oh boy, you had a hot one on Twitter today.
I did? It's been a long time.
Yeah, well, it's going to be, a week in the... Oh, no, are we caught up now with episodes?
Just about, yeah. This will come out, a week from tomorrow as of the date of recording, which doesn't help anybody, but,
I was going to say, I was hoping that we were now in like 1 day away, even though that would be
nerve-wracking. This isn't going to be an overnight edit. That would be miserable.
Yeah, so for people that didn't see... Mr. H here tweeted out something very good today, and we'll save it for the end of the show unless you follow him on Twitter.
I think I know what you're talking about now. Yes. Okay, I'm caught up mentally.
Yes,
it's good
of
to
course.
Have the hosts on board, right?
Yeah, you know what? I throw you curveballs at the beginning of the show, and you deal with them with grace, and it's very frustrating. I wish you would stumble more.
I will do my very best to do a little bit worse.
Perfect.
Worse. There you go. I'm already starting on a good foot.
Nailed him.
All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. Let's get into our pitches. I will lead us off today. Actually, I'm in a bit of an awkward spot here because the Ludum Dare jam just happened recently, and the final games have been made and released. And for those of you who don't know, the Ludum Dare is a worldwide game jam that kind of celebrates really weird games or games that do things in a very new way and that really kind of challenge people to create something out of the ordinary. It's always worth keeping your eye on if you're into indie games or if you're into the types of weird games that we make. Patrolling Itch.io and reading through Ludum Dare is a good way to get caught up with inventive video game ideas. And I am... I'm a bit disappointed to say that the idea that I had jotted down a couple weeks back was apparently turned into 2 video games.
Oh my goodness.
Over this Ludum Dare, which just ended, I think, today. So these games had just been posted a number of hours ago. So that's not me trying to say that I came up with this first. I am trying to kind of cover face and say that, I'm not just stealing this from people. I'm partially glad that these games exist because that's always part of the bittersweetness of Playwright is that we come up with these good ideas and then we can't play them. In this case, you can right now play 2 versions of at least the seed of the idea. We might take it in a different direction, but so I don't want to just come on the show and then just pitch Earthbound because that already exists. But in this case, I think we'll make an exception because this kind of caught us by surprise and we'll make an original idea out of it. So what I want to pitch is a turn-based first-person shooter. Now, that already kind of exists in Superhot in that you essentially use up turns or kind of like a fluid, like a turn, extensive time every time you move. Every time you take an action, such as firing a gun, takes up more time. So you'll notice that if you fire a gun and there's bullets tracing towards you, they will rush towards you a lot quicker than if you had just slightly moved. What I want to do is to go strictly, harshly turn-based. So before we do that, I do want to give shout-outs to these 2 games that I spotted at least. There might be more that have experimented with this idea in the past, but these are the ones that I encountered just today. The first one is called Kun and Gun, and that looks a little bit more Valkyria Chronicles. Not Valkyria Chronicles. Is that the right one? Let me look it up in Steam.
Maybe.
Here. Yes, Valkyria Chronicles. I shouldn't have doubted myself. Where it's... It looks to be like a grid-based cover shooter almost, but you're pulled back in an isometric perspective, kind of like a Fire Emblem. You choose to move your characters around, and then at the end of the turn, you can go into a first-person perspective, kind of like XCOM, except you are manually aiming and firing, which, come to think of it, you might also do in XCOM. It's been a long time since I played XCOM.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Anyways, we're doing a lot of name dropping here. It's not really necessary. And then the other one is called A Gentleman's Shooter, which it doesn't have any videos, and the screenshots aren't super descriptive. I didn't have enough time to download it and play it, but it is all about kind of expending action turns to, I guess, fire a gun or to take a certain number of moves during that time. Let's see what we can do with that. A turn-based first-person shooter, and we'll start the clock there.
Well, what I really like in terms of, I guess, saying an XCOM like, is there's so many instances where in, I guess specifically Mario Rabbids, the latest title, I found myself going, just let me shoot them. I can definitely hit them better than these characters can. And so I love the idea of, right, those games are so mathematically based in terms of what are your percentage chances of really hitting each of these creatures, right? But now put it in my hands, put it in somebody who's more experienced hands, and you potentially get a different result.
Yeah, let's see if we can even take this farther away from the strategy genre and try to make this feel as much like a first-person shooter as we can. Because, Valkyria Chronicles, as close as it is definitely like an abstraction on the third-person shooter genre. I'm curious how closely we can shave that line without crossing over while still kind of adhering to this restriction. I'm thinking almost something like like dueling pistols or something like that. A little bit more movement inherent. But I would like if you have a certain number of action points at the beginning of each turn, and each action takes one of those points, obviously, and maybe you can even bank them and then use them later, like in Bravely Default. But everything that you need to do to position yourself or to aim your gun even a certain number of degrees would require one of these action points. And so it's more about this kind of this dance between the characters as they're trying to line up their shots while staying out of each other's shots, whether they use those points moving and avoiding, jumping all over the place like a Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon type of fight if they used guns, or if they use those points to aim more precisely and to finally pull that trigger and take that one shot that will end the round.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I don't know how, in your mind, does that mean the person is always in direct control of the sort of firing?
Well, you have, just like any first-person shooter, you have your left mouse button or your right trigger on the controller that pulls the trigger, that fires the bullet. But the goal, it's more like chess in that you don't want to go for the kill unless this is like you got them cornered or you got the shot. Being a turn-based thing, there's not any more of these kind of like last-minute dodges necessarily. It's all about like getting your enemy in position, lining up your shot, and taking that shot.
I like the idea of being able also to spend points or spend a turn like reloading. There are games when there's a long reload animation, and especially like survival horror games, right, where there's a feeling of sheer panic that you're not going to be able to do what you need to do. Yeah, that feeling of running out of bullets or potentially having spent your clip early means that you probably can't reload, right? Like that, it's just not going to work.
Yeah, maybe the reload mechanic could be the Brave, to take the term from the Bravely Default, where you reload to, maybe that uses up both of your turns to gain back like one extra turn on your next round. So if you position yourself behind cover, you know that you're safe. You know that there's no way that the enemy can get to you or get around the cover to get their sights on you. Then you can bank both of those turns and get 3 action points on your next turn. And then at that point, you have a lot more elbow room. You have a lot more freedom.
Why don't we add in, like, one of my favorite types of feelings in a first-person shooter is sort of a Quake arena style shooting game. So imagine a layout that feels a lot more like there's a lot of pillars or there's walls to kind of jump off of and stuff and get that mobility. or even like rocket jumping, some form of like a turn-based game. I think could feel, depending on how active those turns are, could feel like strangely like a chase, as opposed to just a bearing down and saying, okay, let's see whose shot hits.
Another way to handle this is what if it's not necessarily like a one shot take the kill? What if you fire your gun and it takes another turn for the bullet to reach the other person? So you hopefully put them in a place where they're up against a wall or they're falling at the end of their jump pattern or something. And so the bullet will definitely hit where they will be in the next turn. Almost like setting up a trap for one of the lizards in Lara Croft Go, where you kind of lead them into a spot where in their next inevitable turn, they will end up getting killed. But you can aim and then they have one turn to get out of the way or to shoot the bullet out of the air or just whatever the mechanic is for dealing with not getting shot. So, I don't want to put somebody in an unrecoverable position potentially, because this could be over in like one turn otherwise. But if you have 2 turns saved up, if the enemy is right in the open, you can use your first shot to shoot them, and then you can like use your second action point to waste time and make the bullet hit, because it takes two periods of time, 2 action points to travel the distance, and 1 to fire, 1 to travel. And both of those could be in your turn. And so that's another advantage of banking one and saving it for later.
I played Chrono Trigger recently, and there's so many times where the other person is getting to go. So like if the 2 turns are not necessarily synced up on the same time scale, or there's like things I could pick up in the arena that give me like a burst of time, right? Which is enough to get out of sync and like, gain that combat edge.
Something that's strictly turn-based would be like, you wouldn't have the same kind of like cooldown timers as much as like waiting your turn. But I really like the idea of items that could steal turns from your enemy, or that could grant extra turns to yourself if you happen to like grab these pickups, or, we kind of mess with those, with the action points on either side. Maybe you have like a half an action point and that's kind of in your pocket. And if you grab another half, then you have a full point to use. Because, a lot of these, they could turn the tide pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. And so now you're in a scenario where you're running around and it's your turn, and there's, like an XCOM style game, there's one of many decisions to make. And so it's an idea of kind of managing your thirst for advantage against the other person, but in a way that I think like makes you not necessarily paralyzed, but feel the pressure or the panic of making the right choice in those moments.
A lot of this would be hiding behind cover or finding a way to kind of block your opponent's line of vision naturally. And so maybe one of the items could even be the ability to like build a shield, kind of like Fortnite.
I guess it all comes down to how cover feels. And if cover feels good, I don't know if you even have to expend an entire turn of getting into cover, or maybe a turn is more like an energy bar that each little thing you do, it uses a piece of it more and more. And so you have that kind of feeling, and you're saying, okay, well, this is enough to either let me shoot 3 shots now while this person's in position, or build a cover and move to a place that's closer to that cover. Like you kind of have to, and moving all takes like, parts of the bar, or you could just do a big movement and use your entire bar.
I always like the cover systems in old games more than the like sticky cover of new games. Sticky cover has its time and a place, but like I like just the simplicity of, if your opponent can't see you, they can't shoot you.
Yeah.
None of this like, I can kind of see his head. Maybe I can try to pick that off with a really accurate gun. Like, there's disadvantages of the new system as well. But there's a lot to explore here, but we're out of time. We have to cut that one off. and I have to give this one a name. This could just be called Duel.
Yeah.
Because I guess it describes like the dueling pistol aspect of it, and also like dual wielding, something that's associated with FPSs these days.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure that dual wielding would really be a crucial aspect of this game design, but it's a name.
I like it. Yeah.
We'll see if you come up with something that can be based on a Steven Spielberg title as well.
Okay, I guess it's time for me.
Yes.
I want to pitch to you a Mario game. A new Mario game.
I don't think there's a market for this.
No one's going to buy this. So in this new Mario game, what makes it new, what makes it fresh, is we're going to take elements of Mario Maker and we're going to take elements of Spelunky and essentially create a world-based, run-based Mario game where the levels or the general worlds have themes and bad guys and their said power-ups or Yoshis or whatever, and every single world is also start to finish like a level of Spelunky. So 1, 1, 2, 3 is, kind of all of level 1, so on and so forth. And Mario Maker style, these bad guys that are generated or coming in at different points, they can also smash into each other and create some of the weirder concoctions, like the Koopa Troopas can pick up a star that happens to be bouncing if you miss it and that sort of thing. So it's a very weird and strange Mario game.
All right, we will start the clock. I want to make sure that I'm tracking. I'm not sure I understand exactly what set this apart, because Spelunky is a lot like Mario already. And so in what ways do you want to make this more like Spelunky? In what ways do you want to preserve like a Mario spirit?
Yeah, so I think for me, the feeling in Spelunky is great, but it is all of a particular world, and I don't want to just make this about genre. But what I really would appreciate seeing, I think, out of a Mario level is what happens when the emergent stuff starts to go down, and pair it with things like the Mario-esque secrets. So a block that spawns a vine and potentially takes you to another world, or the feeling of temporalness with the power-ups in a way that you kind of buy your way a little bit to success in Spelunky, depending on how good you are. Mm-hmm. The Mario, I think, would feel a lot more up to chance, and some levels are just, you get by the skin of your teeth, a star or flower at the right moment.
Okay. So would this be procedural, or would this all be pre-planned, just really big?
Each level is procedurally generated, kind of 1, 2, 3, 4. But the worlds themselves, sorry, that was the 1, 1, 1, 2. You get it. Levels and the worlds themselves are authored in it that they can contain certain obstacles, certain bad guys, and certain power-ups or certain levels. I mean, maybe potentially a water world where you have access to a blue Yoshi, and what does that look like?
Okay. So I'm interested in pursuing what makes this uniquely Mario. What can Mario really bring to the mix? And, I don't want to speak ill of the guy, because, working for Nintendo is kind of our bread and butter, but he doesn't have a lot of mobility options and attacks and stuff that are like truly unique. And that's mostly because he kind of blazed the trail, and over the years there's been a lot of copycats. Just people have learned from Mario. And so, if I'm exploring this crazy world, and I'm playing as Isaac from The Binding of Isaac, then there's like, all these crazy things that I can do, and it's unpredictable because I never know which way it's going to go. Mario, I feel like I have like a handful of pretty standard options. And so are there other things that we can incorporate into this that would make it more unpredictable?
This is the thing I was hoping to get into, because I said now because it already basically is an established genre, that we were going to be a little, I guess, more stringent into holding it to like what actually differentiates it. And I'm thinking here, one of the things that could make it a little bit more flavorful is to bring in things in a 2D setting like Cappy, and be able to take over different creatures or different objects and kind of gain yourself those power-ups that are of a much larger or I guess more diverse variety than your typical, like if we just took, everything from Mario World or Mario 2. But combo that with a platform to get that question mark block ends up being particularly difficult. I think you could get into some interesting feeling experiences.
It could be interesting if this was just a Cappy platformer where all you can do is possessing different creatures with different abilities, almost like a ghost trick in a way.
Yeah, now you kind of get into a place where Mario is forced to experiment and, you can't count. Like if you do want the fire flower power up, maybe you have to instead opt for becoming a fire flower and kind of strangely hop around as you, but you do get that nice, ability to shoot some fire.
Yeah. I like this kind of trade-off of trading mobility options, and especially if you get into Super Mario 3D World had a lot of those piranha plants that were on twisty vines. And so maybe incorporating like snake-like or snakebird-like mechanics where you have to kind of wrap yourself in these various shapes to set up platforms for Mario to walk on or to plug up enemy spawning pipes or something like that, to take advantage of these enemies' unique abilities, just like you would in Mario Odyssey, but in a 2D space and solving these intricate puzzles.
Yeah, if we're gonna also continue to borrow down the path of Spelunky and Mario, wouldn't it be kind of interesting if there are coins still along the way, and instead of buying like discrete power-ups, you could pay to kind of freelance out Luigi or Peach or something and like get a different jump for as long as that character lasted.
Okay, you got your cooldown timer, you've got your amount of money that you can pay to get them immediately. Of course, to prey on the whales out there who just want to play their Mario.
Yeah, perfect. And I think that it would be really cool to bring in some of those old Mario tropes, like if you could go to the critical path and exit a level, and I think there's really great Spelunky players who can get around so safely and so untouched that they're almost taking a shortcut, it looks like. I think if you took the like hidden coins, the hidden red coins or purple, Yoshi's Island-esque coins, and made it so that certain doors or certain power-ups, you had to collect all 8 things to kind of unlock the door, puzzle style, could be really fun in a procedural style game.
In the 2D games, I kind of picture, these big boss encounters as being something that they kind of bookend a lot of the worlds and a lot of the themes of the levels that you go through. You got of course, the Bowsers at the end of the castles. In the original Mario Bros, you have the Birdo fights in Mario Bros 2. You've got the Triceratops on the spinning Ferris wheel from Yoshi's Island.
Yeah, it's almost like you still have to have bosses, to your point there, right? So I don't know if it's a matter of on these authored moments or, everything can't be totally 100%. Well, things could be totally 100% computer generated, but they might not be very fun. So I think you still have to find a way to kind of capture the moments of having those iconic bosses there. And maybe you can do it. Maybe you can do it by just like sticking such and such Koopa, and the whole point of the game is to get through all 8 worlds, defeat all the Koopa-lings again. But in this, this time, what is Lemmy's Castle going to be like versus next time? I think it's like a good version of it feels like a Mario 3 level of, or Mario even 1 level of levels with a Super Mario World aesthetic and having those things play together.
What if the bosses, we kind of shake it up a bit and introduce like a boss mushroom that, the boss can kind of emerge from any creature. We've seen this a lot in games that employ, what is he called? The Magic Koopa. He also has some sort of a name.
Yeah.
I've forgotten. But in like Yoshi's Woolly World, and I think even the original Yoshi's Island, this guy would fly around and just turn random enemies into the bosses that you would fight. And so maybe one in each world, there's one of these boss mushrooms that you free from the pipe. Maybe it's poisonous for you to touch, and so you have to direct it towards whatever enemy you don't mind fighting, and then that morphs into one of these big, like, Binding of Isaac style bosses.
Well, and I was playing Mario World recently, and I thought to myself, some of these boss fights are so silly easy. I mean, especially in that particular Mario game, like, you may as well have gone back to just jump over and, like, land on an axe or whatever.
Yeah.
But I was wondering, like, especially some of these characters that all they do is like walk left and right. What if in that moment there is a, bonus block that is just constantly shooting, mushrooms or fire powers and all that stuff while that boss fight is happening. And you're either trying to race to get the power up because it's bouncing around. You don't want the boss to end up with it. And then the boss can also interact with it. So you kind of get this like, man, Bowser just got 3 stars in a row. I am having a tough go today.
That's interesting because then it becomes more about like managing the space around the boss. And if it's anything like SteamWorld Dig, then the space could be rapidly changing and the conditions of the fight and where these battles are happening could be rapidly changing. And the boss would be aware of this as well and trying to keep the upgrades out of your hands as well.
Yeah, I think that could feel pretty fun when the bosses all of a sudden goes from a known quantity to a fight for space, right? Mario's so good at jumping, so let's give Mario like much more interesting / difficult space to maintain around themselves.
That's interesting. Well, that's all the time that we have there. Closing the book on that one. Q, what is the name for this Mario game?
I was thinking about leaning into the procedural generation and calling it something like Mario's Mix-Up.
That sounds like one of those like Mario is missing.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely
entertainment title. I like it.
It's
Mario's Mix-Up. Super Mario Mix-Up. It would probably be labeled as. Anyways, let's go over now to the community. This is one of your ideas that you have sent in to us. This came from our website. It was pitched at playwrightcast.com/pitch. You can do that yourself if you have an idea that you would like us to read and discuss on the show. Share with everyone. This comes from Thomas Ife, who says, "Today I'd like to pitch a sort of twisted amalgam of Deus Ex, Portal, and the Sexy Brutale. You play a secret agent sent back in time to foil the assassination that sets off a chain of events ending in Armageddon. You have infiltrated a lavish gala and are invited with observing the movements of a number of persons of interest in order to flush out the assassin and save the world. The twist comes from the fact that the building is encased in a temporal loop. As you explore, you find portals in very specific locations that transport you back to previous moments in the evening. For example, you fail to find the assassin in time, but discover a clue that directs you to a certain floor of the building. A specific air vent transports you back, where you can observe a secret meeting that might point you towards another clue. As I write this, I'm aware this sounds a little bit like Sleep No More, the play that takes place in various rooms of a hotel in real time. This could go in a number of directions, but I really like the idea of a game that behaves as though you aren't there, forcing you to work to its pace, not your own. Very interesting, Tom. Let's see where we can take this. We are starting the clock."
So H, you're gonna have to help me right away. I have not played Sexy Brutale.
Okay, so Sexy Brutale, from what I understand, I've not played it either, but I've done quite a bit of reading on this one, is a game where you are not managing a hotel, but you are kind of overseeing the events of a hotel, and all of the guests in this hotel are murdered in various ways throughout the day. And so you're kind of on a looping day schedule, Groundhog Day, like schedule of events, and you're trying to find the cause of these murders, the perpetrator, how they did it, and what you can do to interfere with the murders taking place. And the goal is to make sure that nobody is murdered.
Something between sexy brutal and, I mean, from the beginning of this, it almost sounded like it was going to be a Hitman-esque feeling. And as much as like I'm thinking about the Deus Ex and Portal stuff, I'm thinking that you're going to have to kind of navigate the space in a slower, more methodical way.
That would be interesting, especially if you go back in time and find the secret meeting taking place, you might still need a disguise to listen in on this meeting. So there's that extra layer of like, okay, when does it happen and how should I be dressed to not stick out like a sore thumb in this other place and time?
I feel like there's got to still be a notion of security cameras or something purposely slowing you down, because if it's just a slow walk speed, you're going to get mad more at the game, I think, than anything else.
In this case, since the enemy is the one that's destroying the world or, setting up a terrorist attack or just whatever they're doing, like it feels like almost an opposite Hitman where they are the one doing wrong in a space that they shouldn't be in. And so maybe the security is kind of like on our side, as it were. Like obviously they're more clever, they're not going to get caught, but I like this idea of social stealth, not knowing who to trust and who not to, trying to figure out almost Sims-like what each of these characters is all about and who you can trust and who you can't, making those notes, learning about things to look for as you turn the clock backwards, and this aspect of social stealth rather than necessarily like creeping around. Like there would be times where you're in a space where you shouldn't be and you'll have to be quiet and stealthy, but this kind of oppressive atmosphere where you are an intruder anywhere in the mansion, like you would get in Dishonored or in the Hitman Colorado level or something like that, that doesn't feel like it necessarily suits the like Groundhog Day nature of the looping time scale.
Does this person have the ability to move too? This person, I guess the assassin has to be some kind of AI that you're constantly trying to track down, but is it it has to kind of be on its own path, right? Like the Sexy Brutal game?
Yeah, I'd imagine that everyone who's in league doing evil would be following a certain series of events. And it takes all of our cunning and inspection to try to find out where they are while the crime is taking place. And so, if this could be kind of like her story, where you end up writing pages full of clues that you want to trace down, and next time I'm back in the past, I'm going to see what this person meant when they said that they saw something weird happening at the punch bowl, or, just all these little threads of details that you get that you can test in future times. I think that'd be a fun game.
Yeah, and it's almost like I would like time control or time travel in this, as opposed to feel, a start to finish thing, maybe give you some, YouTube/Netflix style jump back, jump forward kind of control. So now you kind of move it almost into a Tacoma sort of space, where you are moving from place to place, but also you hear someone say something at one point, you don't know what they're referencing, and you can't just like land on a answer. You can't land on a satisfying point necessarily, but you're not totally powerless. You're not going to be taken to the beginning again and hope that you find it this time, because that's just like, that makes it more a matter of how many loops will you sit through than feeling like you have some agency over it.
One of the details that Thomas includes, and again, our rule is that we are not beholden to the suggestions that are given to us. Like, we use them as a jumping off point and expect that things will change dramatically over the course. This goes for our ideas and for community pitches as well. But one of the things that he introduces is this idea that there are specific portals that transport you to various points in time. And so, while we don't have to necessarily stick to that, I think it's worth examining, like, okay, what was it that Thomas was wanting to communicate with that idea? And I think one of the interesting things about that is that instead of giving you full control in saying, okay, obviously something happened here, I'm just going to rewind till I find what went down, is that it specifically precludes you from being in certain places at specific times unless you find yourself there later. If you find that the punch bowl has been poisoned, then you can't just sit there with your rewind button until you find somebody who's acting with it suspiciously. Maybe the timing of the poisoning is the time that a portal in the opposite end of the mansion drops you into. And so there's really, unless you go back to an earlier portal, which might be hard to find, you're not going to be able to see that person committing the crime. So you'd have to use kind of investigation to retroactively kind of narrow down who is this figure. And then when you go back further, you know that you can stop them.
Leaning a little further into that, this might just be a little flavor to add or something, but are you familiar with Doctor Who?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's an episode called The Girl in the Fireplace, where the Doctor is kind of existing on a spaceship, and then he can also kind of take a portal that is a fireplace in this scenario and go visit another place in another time. But what we find out is that those two things are kind of moving at a different pace time-wise. And so I wonder if there's something in the portal system inside of this game that could have time moving at a different pace, or maybe moving in a different direction altogether. So there's kind of the forward and backward series of events happening.
Yeah, that would be really cool. If you have a couple of portals towards the beginning of the game, the ones that are easy to find, almost like a Metroidvania type of way, where you kind of unlock portions of this house that you can get to turn time back further in these different locations. Maybe you have some at the beginning of the game that very naturally transport you just back in time, and you just get to go through the same events over and over. And then some of the ones later on really start kind of messing with this space-time idea. And having to watch scenes unfold backwards is super interesting. And playing out at different speeds maybe would be interesting. There's so many ways. Because if you were operating at a faster speed than everybody else, maybe they couldn't see you, and you could use objects in the air as like platform. That would get weird, but there's a lot of things that can be unlocked by messing with space-time in this way.
Let's say it starts off very methodical. There is one. It starts with a big place, but there is essentially one murder to solve.
Mm-hmm.
And if you find the right portal, end up solving the case, it's like you are changing the future and time is becoming more unstable. Mm-hmm. And so that's opening up new tears that jump you to new points in time. And then you are chasing down these kind of emergent killers, because time is always trying to create the bad guy, right? They're always trying to create the people that with ill intent. And by the end of a level or a stage, you're tracking down maybe 3 or 4 different murderer, wrongdoer AI. Maybe they're even aware of the portals, and now you're chasing a murderer kind of through the portals and through time and trying to figure out where they ended up.
What would be interesting to just kind of put a bow on this one is, at the inception of the game, that you're chasing down an assassin who is going to assassinate somebody, which in a weird chain of events is going to lead to the end of the world. Maybe you find out at the end that the assassination takes place, there's nothing you could have done to avoid it, and it's just kind of benign, and all of your jumping around in time is what leads to the end of the world as you become like a walking black hole, essentially. And so you trying to solve the problem is what created the problem in the first place.
Yeah. The last person that you end up saving is yourself. You create a giant loop and blow up the universe.
Yeah. Anyways, with the end of the universe, we have to end this particular pitch. And Thomas does come with a name. Thomas says, in my head, this is called Horoboros, a contraction of Horology and Ouroboros, if that wasn't clear, though I'm as open to titles that aren't incredibly bad too. That's an interesting, I like the Ouroboros symbol. I think Horoboros has a bit of a strange ring. I don't know if people are going to immediately pick up on exactly what's being played there, but...
Well, it would have a cool ring, except you and I always come up with more on-the-nose puns that I think would take this game in a very different, maybe brothel-y sort of direction.
Yeah. Well, we will count on it being spelled the way it is to explain to people that we are talking about horology and Ouroboros, not any kind of... naughty wrongdoings. Let's close it all down there. If you would like to send us a pitch to discuss, dissect, and eventually build into something interesting in a future show, then you can send that to playwrightcast@gmail.com. You can tweet us at playwrightcast, or you can do what Thomas did and go to playwrightcast.com/pitch to go straight to the pitching portal.
Special thank you to PROTODOME for the use of our theme song, Hello World. It's off the album Blue Noise, and it's very good. You should go listen to it.
And you were saying that there was a tweet of mine that you wanted to bring up towards the end of the show?
Yes, for our final thought of the day, courtesy of a good tweet by Mr. H here. Detroit all humans.
That's my mashup of Destroy All Humans and Detroit Becoming Human. I thought those titles are so similar. There has to be something there, so.
Detroit Become Destroyer of Human.
All right, anyways, that's all that we have for you today. We'll see you next week.
Bye.